Are we on our way to oversupply? The argument about Phoenix is that we do not have enough supply to meet demand, and that's been the case for a really long time. But we are seeing more supply not only in resale, but also in new construction. And so I'm going to show you guys that today, and we're going to talk about what's going on with the Phoenix real estate market. So, starting with the broader economy, let's start with the news. Last week, the Fed's preferred inflation gauge logs lowest annual rise since March of 2021. This was really good news last week. The core PCE, it strips out the cost of food and energy, closely watched by the Fed. It rose 2.8% over the prior year in January, the slowest annual increase since a 2.2% increase in March of 2021. So we finally got some good news as it relates to inflation. And why that matters is because that affects what happens in the markets, and that affects mortgage rates, and mortgage rates affect buyers, and buyers affect sellers, etc. You get the point. So as far as mortgage rates go, this actually was some good news for rates. It didn't happen until the end of the week. So by Friday morning, rates were up, but by the end of the day, rates were down a little bit. You probably don't notice too much of a difference because my latest update that I got from lenders that I speak with was rates are still around 7%. So no huge movement there that is going to save you tons of money if you're a buyer. But, just to know that mortgage rates kind of ended the day lower than they did at the beginning of the day on Friday is good news. And as always, I'm recording this actually on Monday. So if there is any news that happens Monday and Tuesday before this comes out, I'm not including that, any big bold movements in mortgage rates. But that's how we ended the week last week. So let's talk about supply. What is going on with housing supply? According to Redfin, on a national scale, housing market update, new listings post biggest uptick in nearly 3 years, but buyers show restraint as rates rise. So as I've talked about last week in my video, I feel like the Phoenix housing market is just getting stalled because we were so excited about all of this, booming market coming this year, and rates were going down as we started January and into February. And then things just like hit a wall. Rates started to go up, buyer activity slowed down, and listings started to go up a little bit. So in the US, new listings rose over 13% year over year during the 4 weeks ending February 25th, the biggest increase in nearly 3 years. Total inventory is also improving. Active listings are flat from a year ago, marking the first time in 9 months that the total number of homes for sale hasn't declined. So that's kind of a small thing to mention, that the number of homes for sale hasn't declined, but it's a pretty big deal when we continue to see fewer and fewer homes on the market, and now that stalls out. And then we're also seeing more new listings coming to the market. Now, again, this is on a national scale, so that is not specific to Phoenix, but I will say we are seeing some interesting things in Phoenix as well. And it's not just related to resale homes. There's a lot going on in the new construction market as well. So I'm going to get into that. But real quick, if this is helpful for you, make sure you share it with someone who would find it valuable, and consider subscribing. Love to be part of the community with you here. So here is the single family permits year to date for new construction. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because the Cromford report called this out, showing that we have supply that's stronger than it was last year at this time. The number of single family permits issued for new construction this year so far is 2720 as compared to 1102 last year. So a really big difference, about 147% according to the Cromford report, between last year to date and this year as far as new construction permits. And this is interesting to see because it is showing builder confidence. Meanwhile, in the resale market, we aren't seeing such exuberance. They're saying that this January count of new permits is the highest monthly count that we've seen since May of 2022. So builders are really starting to get back out there. But like I said, it's not just new construction that we're seeing some changes in. Let's look at the resale numbers. So this purple line here is 2024. We're at about 15,000 active listings on the market, and it doesn't take too much to tell that this is higher than where we've been the last few years, with the exception of 2022 when everyone listed their house on the market in the summer and we had this big, jump over here. Aside from that, This is higher than all the past few years going back to 2020. And it's slowly increasing. So while this is very small, and I will say a disclaimer of 15,000 listings on the market is not an oversupply for the Phoenix area. But what I am calling out is that we're kind of rising in a time where we normally either decline or stay flat. So it's a little bit of a different trend. Side note, in 2007, 2008, when the market crashed, we had about 50,000 listings on the market. So 15,000 is a pretty big difference. We're nowhere near what we experienced then. Now let's talk about what's going on in new home sales. So year to date, there's about 1,507 new home sales. And if we look at 2023 year to date, it was 1,324. So it's about a 14% increase in the number of new home sales so far this year. I'm not able to find a graph that shows all of this to show you visually, but just so you know, the Cromford report is saying in terms of resale homes in the MLS, those sales are down 5% from January of 2022. Number totals about 2,950, and it's the lowest monthly total that we've seen in the last 11 years. Now, that's not shocking because we know that transaction volumes have been low, but we are starting to see both new home sales pick up as well as new home sales permits, and it seems like that market is taking off a bit more than resale. So let's take a look at where we're at with the Cromford Market Index this week. We're at 116.7 for the first time in a while. I'm not saying 117, so this has gone down just ever so slightly. But what's going on with demand? Well, we're at 79.1, and that's gone up just slightly as well. And supply 67.8, which has also gone up. But the gap between supply and demand has gotten smaller, which is making the overall CMI number a little bit lower because we're coming closer to balance versus before we were trending in a direction of a seller's market. Now, according to the Cromford report, the number of 110 and above is considered a seller's market, and any number between 90 to 110 is considered a balanced market. So, we are approaching that balanced market zone, and every city behaves a little bit different. We're going to take a look at every city here in a second. But note that our supply is about 33% below normal, while our demand is about 21% below normal. So demand is still outpacing supply, but those two numbers are, like I said, coming a little bit closer together, which puts us closer to a balanced range. The way everything was starting out at the beginning of the year, I definitely bet that this CMI number would have been higher by now, and we would have been seeing more transaction volume and higher demand. And at this point, we're not seeing anything like that. Now, here is every city with their respective CMI. Chandler is leading the pack at 203.8. Remember, anything over 110 is considered a seller's market, so Chandler is pretty strong in that direction. Gilbert had no change over the last month. It's at 179.6, which is also a very good seller's market as compared to where we're at with some of these others here. Peoria and Cave Creek, those are in balance. Scottsdale is just kind of barely in that seller's market range. So anything from Peoria on up to Chandler is considered a seller's market. Then we've got Cave Creek, Paradise Valley, and Surprise all in a balanced market, and Queen Creek, Goodyear, Maricopa, and Buckeye all in a buyer's market. Average change month over month on this is about 1.6%. Last week, that number was about 3.1%. So again, we've lost momentum in the direction favorable for sellers. But the Cromford report is saying this trend is weakening, and on the current path, we're headed towards neutrality. I definitely want to keep an eye on the number of new listings coming to the market, how supply is fluctuating, in addition to what's going on in the new home market. I think builders are much more cautious now than they were back in 2006 and 7, but with how quickly we're moving forward with these permits, we certainly don't want to be getting to a territory where we're overbuilding. Now, multifamily might be another thing that you've been hearing about because the number of multifamily permits has been crazy. The Cromford report is saying that the annual rate for multifamily construction permits stands at 21,261 units at the end of January, close to its highest value ever, which was 21,861. This is almost 3 times as high as it was 5 years ago across Maricopa and Pinal County. We know we do have some inbound migration that causes demand for housing here, so multifamily can help with some of that. But how much is too much, especially when you're adding in single family permits as well? So it's definitely something we want to watch, because the last thing we want is an oversupply problem. Check the description below for some resources if you're thinking about buying, selling, or investing, and make sure to check out this video right here to learn about the most popular buyer scenarios and where I recommend they live in the Valley if they are looking for these 5 things.